Welcome to this exploration of how farming has evolved over time. As you settle in and relax, let's journey through the fascinating differences between traditional and modern agricultural practices. These changes represent not just technological advancement, but a complete transformation in how humanity feeds itself. Let's begin with the fundamental approach to farming itself. For thousands of years, traditional farming relied heavily on experience passed down through generations. A farmer would learn from their parents, who learned from their parents, creating an unbroken chain of agricultural knowledge stretching back centuries. This experiential wisdom was invaluable, teaching farmers when to plant based on the feel of the soil, when to harvest based on the color of the crops, and how to manage their land based on decades of observation. Modern farming, however, has introduced an entirely new dimension to this ancient practice. Today's farmers still value experience, but they combine it with data, technology, and automation. Sensors in the soil measure moisture levels with precision. Weather stations provide hyperlocal forecasts. Computer systems analyze years of yield data to optimize every decision. This fusion of traditional wisdom and modern technology represents one of the most significant shifts in human food production. The way decisions are made on farms has undergone an equally dramatic transformation. Traditional farmers were and are master observers. They would walk their fields regularly, examining plants up close, feeling the soil between their fingers, watching the sky for signs of changing weather. Their intuition, honed over years or even decades, guided crucial decisions about planting, watering, and harvesting. This intimate knowledge of the land created a deep connection between farmer and field. Modern farmers haven't abandoned observation, but they've augmented it with powerful tools. Sensors buried in the soil constantly monitor moisture, temperature, and nutrient levels. Software systems aggregate this data and provide recommendations based on complex algorithms. Analytics platforms can predict optimal harvest times with remarkable accuracy. Drones equipped with multispectral cameras can detect plant stress invisible to the human eye. Weather prediction models provide forecasts specific to individual fields. The modern farmer becomes part agronomist, part data scientist, interpreting streams of information to make informed decisions. Labor requirements have changed dramatically between these two farming paradigms. Traditional farming is inherently labor-intensive. Planting, weeding, watering, and harvesting often required many hands working long hours under the sun. During harvest season, entire communities might mobilize to bring in the crops before they spoiled. This labor-intensive nature of traditional farming shaped rural societies, creating tight-knit communities where neighbors helped neighbors and seasonal rhythms governed daily life. The physical demands were substantial, requiring strength, endurance, and dedication. Modern farming has fundamentally altered this labor equation through machinery and automation. Tasks that once required dozens of workers can now be accomplished by a single operator in a climate-controlled tractor cab. Automated systems can water crops, adjust greenhouse conditions, and even harvest certain crops with minimal human intervention. This reduction in labor needs has freed people to pursue other endeavors, but has also transformed rural communities and economies in complex ways. The tools and equipment used in farming tell a vivid story of technological progress. Traditional farming relied on hand tools that had changed little over centuries. The hoe, the plow, the scythe, these implements were extensions of the farmer's own body, requiring skill and physical effort to use effectively. Basic machinery, like simple tractors or threshers, represented significant advances, but still required constant human operation and judgment. Compare this to the equipment found on modern farms. GPS-guided tractors can plant seeds in perfectly straight rows with centimeter-level precision, often driving themselves while the operator monitors multiple systems. Drones patrol fields from above, capturing detailed imagery that reveals problems before they're visible from ground level. Smart equipment adjusts its operation in real time based on sensor feedback. Harvesting machines can separate grain from chaff, measure moisture content, and map yield variations across a field, all simultaneously. These tools represent not just mechanical advantage, but embedded intelligence that amplifies human decision-making. Water management represents one of the most critical differences between traditional and modern farming approaches. Water is the lifeblood of agriculture, and how it's delivered to crops fundamentally affects both productivity and sustainability. Traditional irrigation often involved flooding entire fields, a practice that dates back to ancient civilizations. Farmers would divert water from rivers or wells, allowing it to flow across their land. While effective at delivering water, this method was inherently inefficient. Much water would evaporate, run off, or sink deep below the root zone where plants couldn't access it. Manual irrigation required constant attention and physical labor, with farmers opening and closing channels, moving pipes, or operating pumps. Modern precision irrigation systems have revolutionized this essential practice. Drip irrigation delivers water directly to plant roots, reducing waste dramatically. Automated systems turn on and off based on soil moisture sensors, weather forecasts, and plant needs. Some systems even adjust water delivery to different zones within a single field, recognizing that soil types and drainage vary. This precision not only conserves water, an increasingly precious resource, but also promotes healthier plant growth by maintaining optimal moisture levels. Fertilizer use illustrates another stark contrast between farming eras. Traditional fertilizer application was often a broad brush approach. Farmers would spread manure or chemical fertilizers relatively uniformly across their fields, perhaps adjusting amounts based on general knowledge of which areas were more or less fertile. This method ensured that crops received nutrients, but often meant that some areas received too much while others received too little. Excess fertilizer not only wasted money, but could run off into waterways, causing environmental problems. Modern farming takes a dramatically different approach to nutrient management. Soil testing reveals precise nutrient levels across different zones of a field. Variable rate applicators, guided by detailed maps, deliver different amounts of fertilizer to different areas, giving each zone exactly what it needs. Some systems even use sensors to assess individual plants and adjust nutrient delivery in real time. This targeted approach improves crop health, reduces costs, and minimizes environmental impact. The result is more productive farming that works with the land's natural variations rather than against them. Pest and disease control has evolved from a reactive battle to an increasingly predictive science. Traditional farmers fought pests and diseases as they appeared. When insects infested a crop or disease spread through a field, farmers would respond with whatever tools they had available, from hand-picking pests to applying broad-spectrum pesticides. This reactive approach often meant that problems had already caused significant damage before intervention began. The farmer's skill lay in quick recognition and decisive action, but they were always responding to problems rather than preventing them. Modern farming increasingly shifts toward early detection and predictive management. Sensors and imagery can detect plant stress before diseases become visible to the eye. Weather data and disease models can predict when conditions favor outbreaks, allowing preventive action. Drones can spot pest infestations in their earliest stages when they're still confined to small areas. Precision application technology can target treatments to affected areas rather than spraying entire fields. Some systems even use biological controls, introducing beneficial insects or organisms that naturally suppress pests. This shift from reaction to prediction represents a fundamental change in the relationship between farmers and the challenges they face. Crop monitoring methods have transformed from purely physical field walks to sophisticated remote sensing systems. Traditional crop monitoring meant exactly what it sounds like: walking through fields, examining plants, looking for signs of problems or readiness for harvest. This hands-on approach gave farmers intimate knowledge of their crops, but was time-consuming and necessarily limited. You could only observe what you could see from ground level, and you could only be in one place at a time. A problem developing in a distant corner of a large field might go unnoticed until it had spread significantly. Modern monitoring systems provide a completely different perspective. Sensors throughout fields constantly measure conditions and transmit data wirelessly. Satellite imagery updated regularly shows the health of entire farms from space, with different wavelengths of light revealing information invisible to human eyes. Drones can survey large areas quickly, capturing high-resolution images that reveal subtle variations in plant health. Software systems analyze all this data, flagging potential problems for human attention. The modern farmer can, in a sense, be everywhere at once, aware of conditions across their entire operation in real time. Yet many modern farmers still walk their fields regularly, combining cutting-edge technology with traditional observation to gain the fullest possible understanding of their crops. Yield consistency represents one of the most important practical differences between traditional and modern farming. Traditional farming yields could vary wildly from year to year and field to field. A drought could devastate a crop. Unexpected pests could reduce yields by half. Even in good years, some fields would produce abundantly while others struggled for reasons not fully understood. This unpredictability made farming a risky endeavor and made food supplies uncertain. Farmers developed strategies to manage this variability, planting diverse crops, storing surplus from good years, and maintaining flexibility in their operations. Modern farming systems aim for stable, predictable outputs through careful management of every variable. By controlling water delivery precisely, managing nutrients efficiently, detecting problems early, and optimizing every aspect of production, modern farms can achieve remarkably consistent yields. This consistency benefits not just the farmer, who can plan and budget more confidently, but also the broader food system, which depends on reliable supply. Advanced farms can predict their yields months before harvest with impressive accuracy, allowing better planning throughout the supply chain. Land efficiency closes out our exploration of these 10 contrasts. Traditional farming typically required large land areas to produce enough food. Without the ability to optimize every input and manage every variable precisely, farmers needed extensive acreage to ensure adequate production. This extensive approach shaped settlement patterns, with farming communities spread across wide areas and individual farms, often covering hundreds or thousands of acres. Modern farming can produce significantly more food with less land through the precise application of all the technologies and approaches we've discussed. By optimizing water use, delivering nutrients exactly where needed, protecting crops from pests and diseases more effectively, and selecting crop varieties bred for high yields, modern farms can produce 2, 3, or even more times as much food per acre as traditional farms. This increased efficiency has profound implications. It means that more land can be preserved in natural states while still feeding growing populations. It means that farming can be economically viable on smaller parcels. It represents humanity's increasing ability to produce abundance through knowledge and technology rather than simply expanding the area under cultivation. As we continue our relaxing journey through the world of farming, let's explore how agriculture adapts to challenges and opportunities. These next 10 contrasts reveal how farming has become more resilient, efficient, and forward-thinking, while still honoring its deep roots in human civilization. Weather dependence has always been the great uncertainty in farming, the factor beyond any farmer's control. Traditional farming existed entirely at the mercy of natural conditions. Rain, sun, temperature, wind, frost, all of these shaped what could be grown and when. Farmers developed deep knowledge of seasonal patterns, reading clouds and winds to anticipate changes. They learned which crops suited their climate and accepted that some years would simply be better than others. This dependence on weather created a particular mindset, one that combined careful planning with acceptance of forces beyond human control. Entire farming calendars revolved around rainy seasons, frost dates, and temperature patterns. A late frost could destroy an entire year's fruit crop. A drought could mean financial ruin. Too much rain at harvest could rot crops in the fields. Farmers developed traditions and practices to work within these constraints, but fundamentally, they were dependent on nature's rhythms. Modern farming has begun to shift this ancient relationship through climate-smart agriculture and controlled environment farming. Greenhouses allow year-round production regardless of outside conditions. Vertical farms in climate-controlled buildings can produce crops in any season, in any location. Weather prediction has become far more accurate, allowing farmers to plan operations around upcoming conditions. Drought-resistant crop varieties extend farming into drier regions. Heating and cooling systems protect crops from temperature extremes. While outdoor farming still contends with weather, modern farmers have far more tools to mitigate its impacts. Some crops now grow in places that would have been impossible decades ago, and production schedules have become more predictable. Yet weather remains powerful, reminding even the most technologically advanced farms that nature still has the final say in many matters. Production speed represents another fascinating evolution in agricultural practice. Traditional farming followed the natural pace of plant growth. A crop needed the time it needed, period. Corn took a full season from planting to harvest. Fruit trees required years before producing their first crop. Livestock matured on their own biological schedule. This natural pace shaped everything about farming life. The rhythm of the seasons became the rhythm of existence itself. Farmers worked intensely during planting and harvest, but had quieter periods during the growing season. The wait for crops to mature taught patience and careful long-term planning. Modern farming has developed optimized and accelerated growth systems that can speed production significantly. Controlled environments with perfect light, temperature, and nutrients allow plants to grow faster than they would in fields. Hydroponic and aeroponic systems deliver nutrients directly to roots with maximum efficiency, eliminating the time plants spend searching for food and soil. Selective breeding and genetic improvements have created varieties that mature more quickly while maintaining or improving yield and quality. LED grow lights calibrated to specific wavelengths optimize photosynthesis beyond what natural sunlight provides. Some vertical farms can produce multiple harvests in the time traditional farming produces one. Livestock breeding and feeding programs have accelerated animal growth as well, though this raises important questions about animal welfare and food quality that modern agriculture continues to grapple with. The ability to accelerate production means more food from the same infrastructure, but it also requires careful consideration of quality, sustainability, and the natural limits that perhaps shouldn't be pushed too far. Data usage might seem like a dry topic, but it represents a profound shift in agricultural knowledge. Traditional farming generated little to no recorded data in the modern sense. Farmers certainly accumulated knowledge, but it lived in their heads and in community traditions rather than in databases. A farmer knew their land intimately, but couldn't easily quantify or share that knowledge in precise terms. They might remember that the northeast corner always stayed wetter or that a particular field produced better in dry years, but this remained qualitative understanding. When farmers retired or passed away, much of this accumulated wisdom could be lost if not successfully transferred to the next generation. Modern farming involves continuous data collection and analysis on a scale that would astonish farmers from just a generation ago. Every sensor measurement, every yield map, every weather reading, every input application gets recorded. Over months and years, this creates massive datasets that reveal patterns invisible to human observation alone. Analytics software can identify correlations between practices and outcomes, showing precisely which approaches work best under which conditions. Machine learning algorithms can predict optimal planting dates, irrigation schedules, and harvest timing with increasing accuracy. This data can be shared, compared, and analyzed across farms and regions, accelerating the spread of best practices. A farmer can look back through years of records to understand exactly what happened in their fields and why. However, this wealth of data also creates new challenges. Farmers must become data managers, understanding how to collect, store, and interpret information. Privacy concerns arise about who owns farm data and how it might be used. The human judgment that guided traditional farming hasn't become obsolete. It now works in partnership with data-driven insights. cost structure presents one of the most significant practical differences between traditional and modern farming approaches. Traditional farming typically involved lower upfront costs, but carried higher long-term inefficiencies. A farmer could start with relatively modest investment in land, basic tools, and seeds. Operations could expand gradually as resources allowed. This accessibility meant that farming remained possible for people without large amounts of capital, though success still required land access, which was often its own barrier. However, the operational inefficiencies of traditional farming created ongoing costs. Labor expenses remained high. Water and fertilizer waste meant paying for inputs that never contributed to crop growth. Pest damage reduced yields and income. Inconsistent production made financial planning difficult. Over time, these inefficiencies could consume resources and limit profitability. Modern farming often requires higher initial investment, but delivers better long-term returns through improved efficiency. A GPS-guided tractor costs far more than a basic model, but it reduces labor costs, improves precision, and increases productivity. Installing a precision irrigation system requires significant capital, but it pays back through water savings and improved yields. Sensors, software, and automation all carry upfront costs that can be barriers to entry for smaller operations. However, once installed, these systems reduce waste, optimize inputs, and improve consistency in ways that strengthen financial performance over time. The challenge is accessing the capital needed for these investments, which has created growing divides between well-capitalized farms that can modernize and smaller operations that struggle to compete. Finding ways to make modern farming's benefits accessible to all scales of operation remains an important challenge for agricultural development. Sustainability impact has become one of the most critical dimensions along which to evaluate farming systems. Traditional farming often involved higher resource waste simply because precision was difficult to achieve. Water applied uniformly across fields meant some areas received far more than needed, while others received less. Fertilizer spread broadly meant nutrients washing into waterways. Pest control with broad-spectrum chemicals affected beneficial insects along with harmful ones. Tillage practices sometimes led to soil erosion. However, it's important to recognize that many traditional practices were inherently sustainable, having been refined over centuries to work with local ecosystems. Crop rotation, composting, integration of livestock and crops. These traditional techniques often showed sophisticated understanding of ecological balance. Modern farming offers optimized resource use and reduced environmental impact through precision application of inputs. Every drop of water, every gram of fertilizer can be delivered exactly where and when needed, eliminating waste. Biological pest control reduces chemical use. No-till farming protects soil health. Renewable energy powers operations. Precision reduces the environmental footprint of producing each unit of food. However, modern farming also faces sustainability challenges. The energy required for controlled environments and heavy machinery contributes to carbon emissions. Monoculture production, even when efficient, can reduce biodiversity. The true sustainability of any farming system depends on how thoughtfully it's implemented and whether it considers long-term ecological health alongside short-term productivity. Scalability determines how easily farming operations can grow to meet increasing food demands. Traditional farming was harder to scale because expansion meant proportional increases in land, labor, and management complexity. Doubling your farm size meant roughly doubling your workforce and more than doubling your management challenges as you tried to oversee more area. There were practical limits to how much one person or family could effectively manage using traditional methods. This natural ceiling on scale kept most traditional farms relatively small and family-operated. While some large traditional estates existed, they required extensive labor forces and management hierarchies. Modern farming scales efficiently with technology because automation and data systems don't scale linearly with farm size. One person in a tractor can cover vastly more ground than possible by hand. Automated irrigation systems can manage extensive areas without proportional increases in labor. Drones and satellites can monitor thousands of acres as easily as hundreds. Data systems track and analyze entire operations from a single interface. This technological scalability has enabled the growth of large agricultural enterprises that can farm tens of thousands of acres with remarkably small teams. However, this scalability also raises important questions about the future of farming communities, the concentration of agricultural production, and whether small farms can remain viable in an increasingly technology-intensive industry. Market access has transformed dramatically between traditional and modern agricultural systems. Traditional farming typically connected to local and informal markets. Farmers sold their produce at local markets, to neighbors, or to regional buyers who came to the farm. These direct relationships created personal connections between producers and consumers, but limited reach. A farmer's market was quite literally the people they could physically access within a day's travel. Price information was local and sometimes inconsistent. Finding buyers for unusual crops or specialty products could be difficult. Surplus production might have no market at all if local demand was satisfied. This local focus created tight connections between farms and their communities, but limited economic opportunities. Modern farming connects to digital marketplaces and global supply chains that link producers with consumers worldwide. Online platforms allow farmers to list products and find buyers across continents. Cold chain logistics enable fresh produce to travel thousands of miles. Commodity markets provide price transparency and opportunities to sell into global demand. Specialty crops can find niche markets anywhere in the world. Digital tools allow direct farm-to-consumer sales at scales impossible with purely physical markets. A farmer in one hemisphere can supply consumers in another. However, this global market access also brings new challenges. Competition becomes worldwide rather than local. Price volatility can stem from events on the other side of the planet. Supply chain complexity increases. Small farmers may struggle to meet the volume and standardization requirements of global markets. The benefit of market access depends on having the infrastructure, knowledge, and scale to participate effectively. Traceability addresses the question of where food comes from and how it was produced. Traditional farming offered limited tracking of produce. Once crops left the farm, following their journey became difficult or impossible. Mixed batches from multiple farms made tracking individual sources challenging. If a food safety issue arose, identifying the source could be nearly impossible. Consumers had little reliable information about growing practices unless they knew the farmer personally. This lack of traceability created vulnerability to fraud and made it difficult to verify quality or safety claims. Modern systems provide full farm-to-fork traceability through digital tracking and blockchain technology. Each batch of produce can carry a digital record of where it was grown, when it was harvested, how it was handled, and where it traveled. QR codes on packaging link to complete production histories. If contamination occurs, the source can be identified within hours rather than weeks. Consumers can verify organic certification, growing practices, and origin with their smartphones. This transparency builds trust, improves safety, and allows premium products to command appropriate prices. Farmers practicing high-quality, sustainable methods can differentiate their products and tell their story directly to consumers. However, implementing traceability requires investment in systems and processes, creating another potential barrier for smaller operations. Skill requirements illuminate how the knowledge needed for successful farming has evolved. Traditional farming required skills passed down through generations. Children grew up working alongside parents, absorbing countless lessons about soil, weather, plants, and animals. This apprenticeship model created deep practical knowledge, but sometimes limited innovation. The same methods might be repeated for decades, simply because that's how we've always done it. Formal education was often minimal, with hands-on experience valued above book learning. Success required physical strength, endurance, observational skills, and hard-won wisdom about natural systems. Modern farming requires a mix of farming knowledge and technical skills that would surprise earlier generations. Today's farmers still need to understand plants, animals, and ecosystems, but they also need to operate sophisticated machinery, interpret data analytics, manage software systems, and understand business and marketing. They might need to troubleshoot GPS systems, calibrate sensors, or analyze satellite imagery. Financial management becomes more complex with larger investments and global market exposure. Many modern farmers have college degrees in agriculture, business, or technology. The field now attracts people with diverse backgrounds who might never have grown up on farms, but bring valuable technical or business skills. This broadening of required skills makes farming more intellectually demanding, while potentially making it more accessible to people from non-farming backgrounds. However, it also raises questions about whether the deep ecological knowledge of traditional farmers might be lost in favor of technical expertise. Future readiness brings us to perhaps the most profound contrast between traditional and modern farming. Traditional farming preserves heritage and maintains connection to agricultural practices refined over millennia. These time-tested methods represent accumulated wisdom about working with nature. Traditional crops and livestock varieties preserve genetic diversity that may become crucial as conditions change. Small-scale, diversified traditional farms often prove surprisingly resilient to shocks and changes. The knowledge embedded in traditional farming represents cultural heritage worth protecting. Communities maintain their identities through agricultural traditions. In a world increasingly disconnected from food production, traditional farming maintains important links to where food comes from. Modern farming prepares agriculture for future challenges through innovation and adaptation. As climate change alters growing conditions worldwide, precision agriculture allows faster adaptation to new realities. Controlled environment farming reduces vulnerability to extreme weather. Data-driven breeding programs develop crops suited to emerging conditions. Efficient resource use becomes critical as water and land face increasing pressure. Technology enables feeding growing populations with finite agricultural resources. The innovations of modern farming may prove essential to food security in coming decades. Yet the future likely needs both approaches. Traditional knowledge about resilient, sustainable practices combined with modern technology's power and precision may create the most robust agricultural systems. The farms of tomorrow might honor the past while embracing the future, blending ancient wisdom with cutting-edge innovation to create food systems that nourish both people and planet.